This is the PlayStation 3 video game console. Actually, it's more like a complete home entertainment center when you get down to it. And I'm not one to pick sides here. I'm not getting into the Xbox 360 versus PS3 Civil War. If you're a gamer and you've bought a 360, you probably take sides with that system. If you've bought a PS3, you probably take sides with the PlayStation 3. I've played both systems extensively. I'm giving an objective review of this from a technical standpoint. And there's some pluses and minuses to the PlayStation 3 console. Anybody knows that electronic equipment attracts dust at an alarming rate. And with this thing's shiny black finish, not only does it attract dust, but it just sticks out like a sore thumb. It's virtually impossible to keep clean. You literally need to hire someone to wipe this thing down with a cloth every 10 seconds. And even then, the dust just comes right off the cloth and falls right back onto it. In the history of video game systems, from the 1970s on, no one game console has had overwhelming domination of the market for more than a decade. It just hasn't happened. It didn't happen with the Atari 2600. It didn't happen with the NES. It didn't happen with the Sega Genesis. And the PlayStation has owned a large chunk of the overall game market for a long time. In that time, the Xbox has come out and done very well. And now let's get to the new systems. We have the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and the Wii. And frankly, I think they botched the release of the PlayStation 3 so horribly that they'll simply never recover from it with the kind of numbers that they used to have with the PlayStation 1. And the immensely successful PlayStation 2 with an enormous catalog of games. Something else that's changed in the past decade or two is that you can now get games on multiple game consoles, the same game, and they're more or less the same. So unlike having to get an NES where you could only play Super Mario Bros., or a Sega Genesis where you could only play Sonic the Hedgehog, you can now get games like Grand Theft Auto on both the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. You can get the sports titles on both game systems. Virtua Fighter 5, Army of Two. There's so many different games now that come out on both systems simultaneously. Now, I don't want to get into the nitpicking on which system is really better with which games, and obviously there are some exclusive titles. For instance, Xbox 360 has the Forza series and Halo 3, and the PlayStation 3 has Resistance Fall of Man and the Gran Turismo series. As I understand it, programming game titles for the PlayStation 3 is more complicated than it is on other game systems. And where's the Red Faction series? Somebody needs to bring back Red Faction. I've been working with Sony professional video equipment for years now. And I work in home and online and television media. And Sony is, in my opinion, one of the best equipment manufacturers in the world. I've logged thousands of hours on Sony equipment and their professional recording decks and the PlayStation 2, and I've never had a problem with anything. I think one time we got a Post-it note stuck inside a Betacam deck, and we actually got right through to a technician and they told us how to fish it out. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for Sony as an equipment manufacturer. The thing with Sony is you're always going to pay a premium for that extra quality. And with the PlayStation 3, they got a double whammy because Sony bet the farm on Blu-ray. As far as I'm concerned, the PlayStation 3 was designed as a Blu-ray player first and a game system second. They wanted total domination in that very profitable movie market with physical media and Blu-ray discs. And that brings us to the whole format war. Now the verdict is out that Sony has won the format war with Blu-ray over HD DVD. I disagree with that completely. They may have won that initial round, that initial battle, but the war has just begun. The war is between physical media, like Blu-ray and DVD, versus online media. And by that I mean downloadable movies and TV shows on demand and the kind of stuff you're watching now. Now, I personally like to actually own a physical copy of what I pay for, but that brings us to pricing. There's been manufacturing complications with Blu-ray. They had to basically redesign everything from the ground up. The costs are very high to reflect this, and of course there's also the marketing costs in there that you're paying for. So when movies come out with a list price of $39 now, and Blu-ray players are $400 to $500, $600, frankly, there's no way that they're going to get a mass market with those kind of prices. So we have manufacturing costs, we have startup costs, We have marketing costs. All this is passed on to the consumer with the initial high price of the PlayStation 3. And then they chose to launch this thing without their key titles. The exclusive PlayStation titles that we all loved in the past 10 years are nowhere to be found. There's no Metal Gear series, there's no Gran Turismo series. All that being said, the PS3 is a very well-designed system. The wireless controller is fantastic. And as an all-around media system, the PlayStation 3 is tremendous. It looks and feels like a heavy piece of equipment. It's a lot larger than the PlayStation 2. I think that it's completely insane that the lower-cost PlayStation 3 does not play PS2 titles through the HDMI cable. I think that's a real slap in the face from Sony to their customers, because I was a loyal PlayStation customer and would really have just liked to simplify my life by keeping one piece of equipment on the rack that played all my PlayStation titles, but they for whatever reason decided to eliminate that functionality in the lower cost PlayStation 3. Another gripe is that the PlayStation 3 does not come with component video cables or an HDMI cable. They simply give you composite video and stereo audio, which would have been great in 1991. All that being said, it clearly feels like a game system that has a lot of untapped potential. And I'm looking forward to more PlayStation 3 titles that fully utilize the power that this thing has under the hood. Sony dominated the market with their PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 game consoles. I don't think they're dominating the market anymore, but that's not to say that the PS3 isn't still a great investment if you want to watch movies and play video games. Of course, if you really want a great video game system, you can go out and buy a Sega Genesis. I've had my Sega Genesis since 1989, and it still works perfectly. Frankly, I'd like to see if either the Xbox 360 or the PS3 are working in 20 years.